Hello, I'll explain what this blanket is in a minute, but first, a little test for all of you. Now, which of the following do you think is more attractive? Okay. Amaranth doing ASMR, or old pictures, or recent pictures of Elizabeth Hurley. Look at her. Damn, look at that. If you have chosen Elizabeth Hurley over Amaranth, congratulations, you could be my subscriber. You are my subscriber now. If you chose Elizabeth Hurley, woo, look at her, look at her. Could you now on this topic? If you had a mom who looks exactly like Elizabeth Hurley, and you are truly forced and alone, I really can't help you. I don't know how to help you. You are on your own. I'm very sorry. But to try to go on a more serious tone here, this blanket here is a blanket my mom made me when I was about eight, 8 or 9 years old. Okay, so I've had this blanket for about almost 40 years, maybe 40 years. Okay, actually, let me think about that. About 30 years, 34 years. My math gets a little bit fucked as I get older. So, I mean, like, I'm going to talk a bit about my mom. She's still alive, so I'm going to try to be fair while at the same time talking about, you know, my experiences. Now, my mom is, because Mother's Day is coming up next week, okay? So Mother's Day is next week, next Sunday. My mom will be, or she is, 77, okay? She came to this country when she was 4. Her mom ran a restaurant. My mom served in a restaurant under her mom, my grandmother. She met my dad when she was 14, was married for 30 years. She has basic cooking skills like any mom does. She would clean like any mom does. But there were a lot of problems, okay? I mean, she would buy her kids anything that they wanted. She had some strict guidelines, but she was never an aggressive person. Now, like she would spend a lot of cooking at home, learning from her mom, cooking in a Mexican restaurant. My grandmother lost the restaurant and family-owned business after decades, but my mom left the Mexican restaurant when she married my dad, and they got married and had all 6 of us kids. Now, it's very difficult to relate to my mom. It's very difficult to relate to her as one human being to another. I think, from my perspective, I think my mom has a lot of feminist points of views that are sort of damaging. Now, it's one thing when we trash women, but it's our mother we're talking about, right? And I think I remember my Spanish teacher once said, you can hate your dad, right? You can hate your dad, but you can't hate your mom. Your mom is your mom, right? But if your mom doesn't treat you fairly, then what does that leave you with? And I think you have to be fair on both sides. You know, I think if you're not trying to kill your mom with an axe or a gun and you try to get good grades, I think that should be more than enough. You know, you say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and you do what you're told for the first 17 to 18 years of your life. But it gets to be a trying time because you cannot make her happy. Now, I believe, based on evidence, anecdotal evidence, that my mom had some symptoms of OCD. These days, everybody has OCD, quote unquote, you know, because we have we have a pandemic right now. We are quarantined, so we're always wiping down with alcohol, making sure things are clean. But I think whereas we would probably are inclined to do that, we should just use our common sense and make sure that just to bathe and wash your hands and all that stuff. But my mom would have, I believe, had some OCD elements because she'd always want everything to be clean all the time. And I would always ask her, what are we cleaning for? I mean, people don't come over the house except when the planets align and Halley's Comet is, shooting over our house. You know how often Halley's Comet comes over? Almost a century. I mean, Halley's Comet is a rare comet to see. Seeing solar eclipses and lunar eclipses, that's rare. So that's when people visit our house, and that's when the house should be clean. But we don't have strangers come over the house. We have relatives, we have extended family members. Even then, they kind of should know how we are. So that's kind of frustrating in itself. So, you know, if you're TFL and your mom doesn't look like Elizabeth Hurley, which my mom looks like a kind of a dumpy fat old lady, which everybody's mom should look like, honestly. Sorry. I mean, it's just, I don't want to see anybody who's TFL and their mom looks like Christy Brinkley or Kathy Ireland or what's her name? Cindy Crawford. I mean, shit. Or an aging Scarlett Johansson. I mean, damn, that would be frustrating. Oedipus complex, my ass. You know what I mean? Motherfucker has a whole new meaning. But it's just the way this comes about when you're trying to, get a girlfriend. But okay, let's just say everybody's mom is homely and fugly and, whatever. But we're talking about how well do you get along with your mom? And so it's just really difficult. My sister's always got her attention the most. My mom would like to watch old movies, Murder, She Wrote, Columbo, Macmillan and Wife. You have to look these up. Just look up Sunday night mysteries or movies that old white people on MeTV would watch. Memorable entertainment television. So my sisters would be would fight amongst each other. The problem in my family was that my dad was a physically abusive drunk. He drank for most of my childhood. For most of my childhood. He smoked a lot. He had a bad temper. He never really wanted to have kids. My mom even told me that once. Um, but it was tough. It was tough dealing with an angry father. But my mom was a very complicit person. She told me one time that he was going to hit her. I believe if my dad ever hit my mom, it was probably once, and that was when they had a serious argument about stupid shit that didn't even matter. But it's not my place to say that because, again, this happened before any of us were born. But because any of us were not born yet, how can we say that it never happened because that's what our mom told us? Moms will say, parents will say things to say, oh, I never smoked pot. Oh, I didn't have sex till I was 25, young man, that was to your mother. It's all caked lies so that we don't get the wrong idea. But it's like, we're not reporters, we're not TMZ, we're not intrusive, we're your kids. How about you tell us something? But when parents put the wrath of God upon you, you don't want to see them on Christmas, you don't want to see them on Thanksgiving, you don't want to visit them anymore. And it says, what's the point? So it gets to a degree where it's like, um, you just don't want to relate to anybody. Now, my three sisters, because my dad had a bad temper, my mom was quote unquote the good person. And she was the one that had this very nice conservative attitude. But don't you understand? If you have an abusive person, even if he doesn't hit my mom and he hits us because we look at him the wrong way, why would you sit back and let that happen? Why would you sit back and allow that to happen for decades? And there were times where maybe we were smart mouth and you give him a good, pop in the teeth. I'll tell you not to be doing that no more. You do that to me one more time, you're going to get twice of that, right? Why would you sit back and let that happen all the time? Because there were times where we made mistakes that didn't justify that. Or maybe he just accused us of doing something we didn't even do wrong. But my mom would sit there or cry and complain, and she would still go along with it, which pissed me off. What the fuck, right? And I'll tell you one time, my mom told me this a couple of times. Um, and I'll tell this more in detail on Father's Day, but my dad was going to drive home drunk, and my mom was crying, telling him to get in the passenger seat because he's going to kill us all. I mean, if you go back to the Tom Likas link about drunk dads, you know exactly the kind of fear that you have as a child, being afraid of your dad. But what's even worse is when the mom goes, quote unquote, goes along with it. Why would you go along with that? So, besides the fact that my mom was complicit and complacent and agreeable to what my dad did, she let him pay the bills, she let him pay the taxes. She had this, um, she would pick favorites. At least this is my opinion, of course. I could be completely wrong. I know I'm not. But my mom would pick a favorite son or pick a favorite daughter, which you do not do unless you want your kids to hate you or try to kill you, okay? And that was irritating to me. And I felt like, okay, you don't get to do that and excuse and then later on say, what did we ever do wrong? Oh, let's go through the list, okay? That's hard. I always felt that my brother, who was blind and had mild symptoms of Down syndrome or autism, got favoritism. And he was only 9 years old. My mom, when my brother died of AIDS, because we had um, we had transfusions for anti-hemophilia recombinant because my brother and I were severe hemophiliacs. They didn't check blood back then in the 1980s, and so if somebody had AIDS or the coronavirus or back then or whatever, then that would go into our system. My brother got AIDS. I had hepatitis C. I do not have hepatitis C because I took this thing called Sovaldi, and Sovaldi, if you can see it, this was the drug I took to cure my hepatitis C. So I'm Hep C free since 2014. Let me see what the date was. I think it was November 2014 or 2016. Yeah, so I've been Hep C free for about 4 years. Um, so yeah, I mean, like when my brother died, and it was horrific, and there's no debate about, you know, you know, my mom could not have Thanksgivings. She could not have real Christmases. And she kind of, I mean, the first couple of years when she would cry about it, most of us stayed silent. We were trying to be objective. But after like a couple of decades, um, when you throw it, you're just kind of throwing it in my face, like I'm supposed to feel bad. I almost felt like after 20 years of her crying about my brother, it felt like it was almost like she was saying, take me and put my brother in my place. Well, maybe you should. I mean, what was my life? I was the wetback of the family, the three-fifths of a person, the quote unquote Negro slave that didn't have any human rights, that animals were better than me. I mean, like, I just didn't feel like a human being in that house. And my mother, for all she tried to do, I mean, when I was a baby, when I was a young man, even up to when I was 9 or 10, I cried for my mom. I wanted to be with my mom because I didn't have any love in my life. But after when I went through high school, I realized I had nobody, really nobody. And that transferred over to my impulsively trying to chase girls a lot, buying them gifts, um, writing to celebrities once a week when I was 19 years old. Um, I would chase girls on the internet, chase girls in chat rooms, chase girls at college campuses. I did it too much because I didn't get love at home, because I felt like I was never going to be as good as Sebastian. Now, it's not Sebastian's fault. Do not give him a hard time, or I'll give you a hard time. Sebastian is innocent in this, but here's the thing. She could have treated all of us equally. Um, I believe my mom treats my older sister with way more respect than the other two sisters. One of my three sisters committed suicide because of the feelings I had. Even when she was married to a police officer, she still took her life, or her husband helped her. Um, and so that's why my mom and my oldest sister share a bank account because she could trust her out of it. But my oldest sister doesn't really care. And she likes the power. It goes to her head. She's not modest. She's not innocent. We had a pissing match over something I disagree with my mom about. I have not spoken to my oldest sister since 2004. We have not spoken. So that was difficult. Um, and I don't know. Like I said, and that's why when I did when I was on Family Watch, I didn't want to deal with her. I'll tell you what happened after that Family Watch. My last video that got like 300, 400 views. You know which one. My mom gave me a hug the last time I saw her, which was in March, I think. Was that when I did the video? March, February, March. I didn't hug her back. I didn't stop her, but I didn't hug her back. Because I asked myself, where was this hug when I was getting the shit beaten out of me by my dad? When my oldest sister was giving me a hard time. She wants to wait for the worst things to happen to cry, but you should be crying before anticipating the worst. I remember a girl that I had. Well, she was my last sex partner. She wasn't that attractive. We didn't continue a relationship. I've had a sex life, not a great one, but it was good enough, I guess, to exist. And I talked to her. We had sex, and we talked, and she said to me that her abusive dad, who liked to beat up her mom, her mom up and left, took her and her brother and left. She also didn't have, the girl I had sex with didn't have her own cell phone, so she had her brother's cell phone number. I was like, this isn't going to work. We got to contact each other better. You need to have your own phone. But uh, she was in her early 20s when I last saw her. She's in her late 20s. I don't know what the hell's going on. But the fact that her dad walked out on her, I mean, not her, that her mom walked out on her dad, showed that her mom was braver than my mom. So I guess the moral of this is that, and the main thing that was the problem, but more importantly, besides the favoritism, besides the being complicit with my dad, my mom, I could never do good enough. She would always want us to clean. She would always want us to do, and then she would victimize herself, saying she had to do all this. You can do whatever you want, but don't get wrapped up in having to do things all the time if you can find a way to cut down on energy. Even I have to realize this. I feel like I want to do everything in one day, and I can't do that. So this has been a difficult time. And I just don't know how we can't get along. My mom has made up her mind that my oldest sister is her favorite, and maybe she'll talk to my other sister, maybe she won't. But we're not going to bond. I mean, there are times where my mom, in her feminist ways, would mock men and take women's side all the time. She can't be objective and say maybe the man is right and the woman is wrong. She has to be, what is it? My niece, my sister, my oldest sister's kid would say boys are dumb because my oldest sister would say boys are dumb. But where would she get that from? My mom. My sister's got the worst bad habits, the worst of habits from my parents, and even myself included. But you have to just wake up, like that. Wake up and just look around you, because you look to your mom for guidance, and you can't do that. Some of you may live with your mom, and you may have to live with her a little bit longer until this quarantine is over, to start packing your things, start getting your things together. Go through your boxes. If from my last video on Wednesday, go through your boxes and look for things and things you haven't seen in a while. Get your head organized. Because of all the women in the world, as we come upon Mother's Day, like if you get along with your mom, great. I hope you do. But some of us could never do that. Like I said, We could never clean the house great enough. We could never do things fast enough. Um, she would nitpick things, and she would criticize things. She would find ways. She would find things wrong with you, and she would make those criticisms. Even when just instead of nagging, just dial it down. Trust your children. Trust people around you. My mom never had friends. Most of the jobs that my mom had, the first job I remember my mom had was at McDonald's. And then later on, it was at schools that we used to go to. So I remember her telling me that she never finished college. Later on, she told me she did finish college. She'll change the story. These are my personal opinions because again, well, I never told you all my real name and I won't because I like who I am now. And also too, I just don't, you know, I don't like talking about this kind of stuff, but I feel like if you can learn something from it, great. If you can't, you can't. Two more things, because tomorrow is May the 4th. May the 4th be with you and all that. This is my favorite story, because Mother's Day is coming up next week. Um, this is about Cade Skywalker and his mom. Now, his mom is definitely a MILF, but luckily, Cade Skywalker can get tail, so he's not frustrated in that Oedipus way. And and what's interesting, his mom is probably the hottest chick. I know Darth Talon is. Darth Talon, the Twi'lek with the red with the. I've shown Darth Talon many times on my channel, so Darth Talon's a hot chick with the red lightsaber. But what makes her interesting is that she's two different people. Uh, she's Nina Calix, an Imperial officer, Imperial sort of the set like third in command. Okay, she's like a really hot MILF with black hair, and she's in charge of the Empire, but it's an empire that's been divided between the Sith and Emperor Fel of a newer galactic order of a newer republic. But it's still sort of an empire in structure with stormtroopers. But she doubles as a bounty hunter and a Morrigan Cord, and then being an Empire Imperial officer Nina Calix. So applaud to Cade Skywalker's mom. Uh, we all salute you, at least I do. And I just want to put in my 2 cents. It's not really my fight. I do video games on this channel, but I just want to say fuck you, Naughty Dog. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, you know, when Adolf Hitler took over Germany, I mean, he saved the economy. He saved the economy for Germany, but he also had ideals, and that cost a lot of Jews, or Jewish, if I should be more correct here. He cost a lot of Jewish their lives, putting numbers on them, putting them in concentration camps. Now, I'm not accusing the people behind Naughty Dog and The Last of Us Part 2 of being Hitler, but they're 12 steps removed from Hitler. I mean, they just don't have guns and soldiers and armies to push their ideals through. But they try to silence people on YouTube, even small YouTubers. So even though this channel is never monetized, I do have a post office box in the description below. Let me say this. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible as far as the graphics and the sound and the gameplay and the mechanics are really good. But if your presentation is going to make people mad, and if you're going to shut down videos and channels for that, fuck you. Seriously. You just, when I call people out on bullshit, that includes my family who try to shut down what I have to say. I feel like it's like looking at my family again. And when people try to shut down what people have to say, no. I mean, I would do a whole video about if they said, well, we know what hemophilia is, and therefore women are going to have severe hemophilia, and anybody doesn't like it, we'll shut your channel down. If you did something like that, as a hemophiliac, you're going to hear from me, definitely. So slow your roll, as that phrase is so 2000, but slow your roll, dial it back, and let people say what they want to say, okay? If there's libel and slander, there's libel and slander, but I've been hearing this, and I hear you're hacked and all this stuff, so just cut it out and let people say what they want. And put out your game and see who buys it. Probably not many people. Until next time, I'll be doing a Memorial Day episode, so stay tuned for that.